The Warbird, a Class 5B type, the Romulan heavy battle cruiser, the Star Navy Raptor, the D'Deridex. It's one of my favourite designs from Star Trek, up there with the Mogai class from the Romulans. Hello all, Rick here, and let's take a look at its lore. The original design was created for Star Trek The Next Generation by Andrew Probert and started with the concept of the bird of prey from the original series. Numerous designs were created based around the notion of an oval set of pylons that supported nacelles, in contrast to the standard Federation designs to set it apart. The aim was to create an imposing vessel that could present a challenge to the Enterprise D and reintroduce the Romulans with an impression. Many of the original concepts have the ship orientated vertically, with the nacelles above and below the ship, and for some reason, this positioning seems to reduce the wasted space kind of look of the Warbird. This was done to create a contrasting look, yet maintain the old rules of keeping line of sight among paired nacelles. Rotating at 90 degrees and you already get the origin of the class as it appeared on screen. One concept emerged from this angle with only top wings, which would later inform the Mogai class. It was also always planned to be larger than the Enterprise to reinforce its menace. Of course, a big inspiration was the raptor motif from the Bird of Prey, with the hull decoration resembling mechanised feather patterns, the hooked beak at the fore, and the talons pointed at the end of the nacelles. The first model was created by Greg Jean and was green, while a second was lighter grey, but its lighting was colouring it greenish too. The D'Deridex class is the most formidable and effective Romulan warship built for its time. Romulan ships of the past were often smaller than Starfleet ones, although no less dangerous, and a focus on stealth. The D'Deridex class was the result of advances in cloaking technology maintaining the stealthy dynamic of Romulan vessels while creating a bigger, imposing presence, while implementing lessons learned from both Starfleet and the Klingons. The Romulans had withdrawn from the galactic scene for 53 years of self-imposed isolation. This ship was to make a statement that the Romulan Star Empire was returning to the galactic scene in the late 24th century, and they wanted it known. But what provoked such a turn in Star Empire design? What was a big enough threat to warrant such a vessel? Well, many points to the United Federation of Planets' Galaxy-class project, which was in development at the same time, beginning in the 2340s. There'd even been voices within the Federation about how overpowered the Galaxy was, and that it might invite challenge from other powers. In some ways, the D'Deridex might be seen as this warning come to fruition. However, I have a second factor: the Borg. The Borg have been making inroads into the Beta and Alpha quadrants from the mid-24th century, and looking at their transwarp network map and general location, they would have hit Romulan space before they came to Starfleet's attention. We know for a fact that they had hit Romulan colonies, as the neutral zone patrols in 2364 were stepped up to confront the Federation as a suspect. On top of this, we learn in later years that the Romulans have been as avid as Starfleet when it comes to dissecting and researching the Borg for the advances they can bring. The Romulan state was incredibly secretive, and it's not too hard to imagine that they minimalised information concerning the Borg even among its own people, yet suddenly found it a good idea to pivot their designs into creating larger and more powerful ships. Which, like the Galaxy class or Odyssey class on the Starfleet end, is a key factor in its versatility. The D'Deridex was quite simply large enough to house a myriad of different functions, something not really like how the Romulans used to operate. It had ample cargo storage and many science and engineering laboratories, whereas smaller vessels of the Imperial Star Navy tended to focus on one thing. These were pinnacle vessels of the Empire. Perhaps they were indeed drawing inspiration from what they saw Starfleet doing. The Romulans had extensive sensor equipment, second only to Starfleet if not rivaling or better in some areas. This was put to good use on the Warbird, with it running powerful intelligence-gathering suites from numerous passive and active arrays. One thing from Apocrypha that I like is that much about the Romulan operations on these ships were classified or just publicly false. For example, it was cited that the crew complement was only 622, when in fact it was more than double this. Additionally, most console interfaces on ship required a specific input of buttons from the operator, not just a login. In fact, entering a login, even the correct one, without this second step would only allow the user to access facsimile controls that only appeared to be carrying out commands, but in fact did absolutely nothing except silently alert security. There are also several off-limits rooms on board, probably reserved for Tau Shiar operatives with clandestine communication equipment not on any official schematics. The class was named after one of the former praetors of the Star Empire, or possibly a system in their space, could be both. It was a whopping 1,041.6 metres long, hitting the kilometre-long starship before Starfleet did. It was 772 wide and 285.7 tall, with a mass of 4,320,000 metric tons. It consisted of 63 decks, which housed 1,500 crew. It could house up to 25,000 people in emergencies. Despite this, it was only armed with 6 disruptor cannons, capable of beam or pulse fire each, and only 2 torpedo launchers, which were capable of handling variable payloads. Of course, this is allegedly, and I suspect that they had more armaments. I don't normally mention tractor beam placement in these videos, but the Romulans liked to employ them in combat, so they featured at least one at the fore of the vessel. Additionally, they occasionally employed triphasic technologies in their emitters that gave off weapon signatures of other ships. The warp systems are of course famous for utilising the singularity core instead of a regular warp reactor, as employed by many other species, somehow harnessing either its gravity or radiation emissions as fuel and plasma. These are very effective engine designs, but temperamental ones, in that any damage to the system created traceable signatures, something a vessel with a cloaking device did not want. Interestingly enough, if the reactor was breached, you'd sometimes end up with an implosion event instead. It has a cruise speed of warp 6 and a maximum safe velocity of warp 9. However, it could push up to warp 9.6, but this causes permanent damage to their propulsion, requiring fresh components and a lengthy replacement procedure to remedy. In terms of auxiliary craft, it contained 16 shuttles and 8 smaller shuttle pods. Later vessels may have housed wings of Scorpion fighters too, but these were introduced towards the end of its life. It was equipped with 22 transporters. Of course, like most Romulan vessels, it was equipped with a cloaking device, which at the time was the most advanced one they had produced, capable of generating substantial fields. However, some limiting factors were that the aforementioned engine detectability, and that it could not fire while shrouded. Such attempts would redirect the fire back within the cloaking field. For as powerful and numerous as the iconic Romulan Warbird was, the vessel saw a relatively short time in the limelight. It saw a minor refit program from 2367 lasting 2 years. This included anti-Borg technology, such as harmonic oscillators in the disruptor banks, and critical areas of the ship having transporter scramblers installed. The class halted production around 2380, as the Mogai class rose in prominence, a more reserved vessel with newer technology. However, the D'Deridex was an enduring design, and the Star Empire had produced them in such quantities that they continued to operate in the Star Empire for decades after. The lore has multiple differences on what happened to them post-supernova, as by 2399 the Star Empire had moved on to numerous other designs that were far more slimmed down thanks to the loss of their homeworld and many facilities. Additionally, the Dominion War thinned their numbers substantially, as it did with many other galactic powers. Its ultimate fate is unknown, but with the collapse of the Star Empire into smaller factions, it's probable that there are many still out there, as no official decommissioning was issued. So, this pretty much sums up the D'Deridex class. There are non-canonical prequel ships to this, but as it stands, this was the first Warbird we truly see in the Star Empire. It certainly did its job at presenting the Romulans as a force to be reckoned with once more, and it's equal parts clandestine and bluster. This is a really deep cut into an unrelated franchise, but in Dungeons & Dragons, there are these magic boots that can either make you walk completely silently, or obnoxiously loud depending on what one you need at the time, and this is what this ship is. I love it. Thanks for watching this lore dump on the Big Green Warbird. I have been Rick, and until the next one, thanks again, and goodbye.